Hello and welcome everyone. If you can see me, just send me a wave or say hi or raise your hands. We're going to wait for a couple more minutes for a few more people to join in. And in about 5 minutes or so, we can start the session. Okay, so we have 14 attendees so far. Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining today. Hi guys, hello. I see a couple more people joining. Welcome Pia. Hi Marisha. We're going to wait for a couple more minutes for everyone to join. Hi Marvin, how's it going? Hi Christian, or both Christians. We have two Christians today. Hi Salim, how's it going? So we have more people joining. That's great. Hi Amanda. Hi Angelo. Good to see you here. Hi Eric. Hi Christelle. Hi Angita. Hi JP. All right, so we'll wait like a couple more minutes. I would say I'll give it around 2 or 3 more minutes to start, just because a couple of people are joining in. I'm sure a lot of them are getting out of meetings already, and then we can start. Hi, Dennis. Hi, Stefan, how's it going? All right, we wait 2 more minutes and then we can go. And we have a couple more people joining here as well. Oh yes.
Finally. Hey. Hello.
Hi, Gisela. We're live already, so would be great. Thanks for joining. Would be great to have you unmute, and we can start in like a minute or 2.
Okay, perfect. Now.
Perfect. Thanks. Yes, JP, it's a really nice board actually. So we would have ideally met in Cannes, and we would have been drinking beer just about now on a boat like this. But yeah, for the time being, we're going to do this virtually, and we will, like, if you have a drink, guys, everyone on the call, feel free to grab a drink. Hi, Adam. Nice to see your wave. Hi, Angelo. Hi. But yeah, for sure, we're just hoping to kind of create a similar environment as we would be doing, drinking on a boat, chilling, not doing much right about now. But since we all can't do that, let's just make do with what we have. All right, I guess we have a good number of attendees here. We will just give it 30 more seconds and then we can start. All right then. Perfect. So welcome everyone. Thanks for joining this webinar especially on a Monday when it's super busy for everyone. We really appreciate your time and we really appreciate you being here. I'm sure all of us have a lot to learn from the different things that are happening in the ad tech space, which is why Show Heroes decided to kind of host this Cannes from Home, or as we now call it, Summer Ad Tech virtual event, to talk about different topics that concern us, that affect us on a day-to-day basis and is affecting our business, so to say. And today we have two very special guests. Our moderator would introduce you to them in a short while, but let me introduce you to the topic first and then our moderator. So our topic for today is how AdTech is out on a mission to be an enabler for everything that goes around in the space, and yet nobody wants to pay for AdTech. And who else would be a better fit to kind of talk about it than the AdTech twins themselves? You might be wondering, what do you mean by AdTech twins? But I'd let our moderator introduce you to this person. So our moderator for today is Ilhan Zengin. Ilhan, can you please turn on your camera? Hi, Ilhan. As you can see from his t-shirt, he's evidently working for Show Heroes. He is in fact the founder of Show Heroes. Many people who know him know that he comes from Group M. Basically, he was earlier at Plista. I think this was around 4 or 5 years ago. And he set up the business for Plista and different things at Group M back in the day. And then at some point, he decided to buy a boat, throw a Show Heroes party. Sorry about that. And yeah, now he's here. Over to you, Ilhan.
Thank you, Tanya. Very nice boat over there, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Hey, thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning in for today's session. I think it's the first Show Heroes session at the formerly known Cannes from Home event. Now it's the Summer AdTech event, which is obviously a very generic name, but still I think you get the idea. So what we're going to do today may be a little different from your usual webinar type of thing. And the reason for that is because we have some very special guests on board, actually, literally, today, compared to your usual panelists. And with that, I would like to introduce the infamous, I should say, AdTech twins, as everyone knows them, to you guys. We have on board Kai Schneider and Jörg Schneider. Can you please go on camera, guys?
Hi, everybody. Good to be here.
Hello, hello. Nice boat. Thanks, Ilhan. Is it yours or your future ex-wife's one?
I'm not so sure about that. She is not around, but I think, most likely it's mine.
Actually, neither. Ilhan is super happy with my performance, so he just decided to gift the boat to me.
It's all about sharing. It's like a sharing and caring industry. And speaking about the industry, we have two with you guys, obvious industry veterans here on board. And maybe briefly, because for you start introducing yourself, let's quickly talk about how we met for the very first time. Because I thought maybe it would have been on Cannes, let's say 4 years ago or so. So I thought back, and actually, like the three of us together, right? The two infamous AdTech twins and me as a third party together at the same time.
So me as the fifth wheel, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think it wasn't Cannes, but it wasn't the first time. The first time when we met, the three of us, was at DMXco at, I think it was Motel 1, at the first day before the DMXco was about to start.
Oh, that's true.
It's true, right?
Yeah.
So I was supposed to basically practice my presentation, but I should have, been doing the other day. But I ended up doing something else, namely drinking a lot of beer and smoking a lot of cigarettes with you guys. And I brought actually beers and cigarettes because I think if there is one thing you guys are known for, except for being veterans in the AdTech industry, it's definitely beers and cigarettes. So I will keep it here, as a little souvenir for the session today. And with that, I'll pass over to your introduction. So let's start with Jörg, because he's on my screen right now. Jörg, the stage is yours.
Thank you. So yeah, not so sure about famous AdTech twins or whatever, but we have been around quite a while. So I think 17 years ago, we started at Lycos by a coincidence actually, because we didn't apply together and we didn't plan to go into that space together. So actually I was, during my university time, looking for something that's fun, but where I can work without being too much involved. And I found a home in customer support and in the product management at Lycos. And a short time after, Kai joined. And then 6 months later, we worked side by side in the same office. But this was actually all coincidentally. And since then, I've been around usually on the sales house side. So on the commercial side, monetizing websites in all digital fields. With High Media after Lycos, then with Undertone, founded Undertone in Germany for the American company. And then finally, 2.5 years ago, something like this, I joined Just Premium. So I was always working on both sides, supply and demand. I was more the commercial guy, Kai more the tech guy. So the good thing about this was that whatever I have done, he learned, and whatever he has done, I learned. So we kind of always went through the whole thing together and keep us up to date, so that we made the whole travel through this crazy industry always together. And yes, it's true, pretty often with a beer and a cigarette in the hand.
Thank you. So Kai, I guess the turn is on you.
I try to make it a little shorter, as for the introduction at least. 17 years around, I've been more stumbling into the AdTech scene in 2008, and then very early stumbled into something which was called real-time bidding back then, and now I'm doing programmatic real-time advertising for video since for already 10 years. I have helped building and brought to market 2 SSPs, one for display, one for video, and yeah, have seen quite a bit. And as Jörg already said, we have not always been working together directly. We also have, you know, split ways and joined different companies. The good thing is that I always found, since I'm a little bit lazy when it comes to studies, it's always taking a shortcut learning from people. So learning from people, from experts who just share their knowledge and their expertise goes so much quicker, and is actually so much more fun than, you know, trying to figure stuff out on your own. And then compiling this and, you know, putting things together has been somewhat easy to do at the end. So it's really about being out in the market for many years, meeting many people. And yeah, we both figured out that with beers and yes, sometimes cigarettes, it goes even better because people just then enjoy it even more and share more of their knowledge, not because being totally drunk, but, you know, being in an easy atmosphere. So let's try to get this easy atmosphere here in a virtual round as well. It's always been very easy to do that in Cannes at a real yacht. It doesn't yet feel like it, but cheers to Ilhan. Let's try to bring this around anyway.
Okay, thanks for that, guys. So let's kick it off. The question that we are asking in the subject line of this session is, AdTech wants to be an enabler, but nobody wants to pay for it. So I guess my first question out there for debate for the three of us would be exactly that. I mean, why the heck do you think no one wants to pay for good old AdTech?
So first thing is the good old AdTech. There's a lot of commodity around. So if talking about AdTech, usually we think about ad serving, we think about, you know, data solutions, we think about very, very much or many solutions that are basically only there to make things happen, like ad serving, like programmatic environments, real-time bidding, based on a standard protocol. So it's not always the super fancy stuff and the super duper innovative stuff that actually makes our revenues being an AdTech, being an advertising space. And that's been a pretty, let's say, busy market in terms of many competitors. A lot of companies backed with VC money, only to you know, to also create issues only to solve them, just to get some VC funding and to make an early exit. So that's also why AdTech as a branch probably has gained a little bit of a misperception. You know, being there mostly for itself, making founders become billionaires and not really solving the real issues. At the same time, to get the groundwork done, I think more companies offer the same solutions, and the competition, of course, was driving business models to go more into cheaper share businesses, so to decrease revenue shares. And at the end, we have seen that, yeah, basically it has been like a limbo, like a price war, that there was always an SSP, for instance, offering you real-time bidding services for cheaper share than the others. And of course, the market took that advantage and always went for the cheaper solution. Because on the surface, if you look at it on the surface, they all do more or less the same, at least for programmatic platforms. Of course, in detail, that's not true, but that was more or less, I'd say, the assumption there.
What do you think, Jörg, coming more from the commercial side, if you talk about clients, for instance, what's your take on that? I mean, are clients willing to pay for maybe not the good old AdTech, but maybe the shiny new AdTech, or are they rather reluctant?
Well, I think when you want to answer that question about the shiny new AdTech, you need to look at the original AdTech, right? Ad serving, and which starts with display, and then into video with player technology, creating a network. So you needed some functionalities back there, and that was actually something that advertisers were not willing to pay for, because this is an environment that actually the supply side created, right? So if you think about where all those websites were coming from, most of them, and when advertising came, were actually copies from magazines, TV, radio, whatever, other media. So these guys thought, okay, listen, there is a technology called internet out there, and we can make some money. So what do we need for that? We need, well, ad technology to do it. We need technology to put ads somewhere, so ad technology. So AdTech was born. And this was actually a burden that the supply side had to carry on its own, which was okay, because it was an offering that was new and you wanted to bring it to the advertiser. So advertisers thought, okay, we are paying money for those ad slots, as we do it in newspaper, wherever. But of course, what's AdTech cost? We don't know what any fees, because hey, we don't pay the Spiegel magazine some fees just to get it on the paper. That's their offering, right? So it should be part of the CPM or whatever price model you use. And that was fine for a while. And that changed then, first of all, when we got massive more inventory and the CPMs were going down, down, down. So then suddenly AdTech fees became a thing because margins got decreasing. But then the demand side, first of all, the media agencies also added ad technology on their side for verification reasons, for targeting reasons, but also for controlling reasons and for keeping revenues and impressions actually under control. So then it became actually a game that was on both sides of the aisle. And here as an advertiser, when you think like 10, 12 years back, why should I pay for that, right? So I have an agency that thinks, okay, AdTech is something I need for having advertising live. The supply side thinks the same. So my sales houses, my publishers, they do operate AdTech. Okay, so let them pay for it, right? It's out of their cut. Yeah? And still, I do believe that there was not real understanding back then on the advertiser side what, and then the involvement and the evolution of ad technology. What do I have to do with that? So there was no real understanding. But ad technology grew and grew and grew in between supply and demand, which was actually a problem, and it was actually also intransparent. So first of all, the party where the money is coming from doesn't want to pay in the first place for it, and that's the advertiser.
That's very interesting.
Right. Sorry to interrupt, but that's a very good point that you make, Jörg. And in fact, I do see some advertisers as a part of the attendees today. So I'd like to encourage all the attendees to go ahead, ask your questions. I'm sure, this is more on the supply side and, you have a different point of view maybe. So feel free to use the chat box on the right side of your screen, change it to all panelists, or if you want to address it to a specific person, feel free to post your comments here, or you can use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to ask questions.
Thank you, Tanya. Very good remark. Tanya will monitor and collect the questions while we're moving forward. And obviously, you have a chance to always interrupt and to ask to make the discussion as lively as possible. So basically, what I was about to say, based on what Jörg and what Kai both were saying, is that I think it's very interesting, given that you initially, at least, and looking at Kai's point here, you came from two different directions while answering the question, right? Like Kai in the beginning basically made the point for the industry, the space, AdTech as a whole, being underfunded these days because there was no real, just a couple, of a handful, if you will, unicorn cases back in the days in the golden age of AdTech, right? Like early 2000s up till 2010s, I should say. And then, secondly, talking more about the client, the commercial side of things, you're basically arguing the fact that, it becomes very difficult to actually charge for the service that you are providing as an ad technology provider. And that's actually the reason why the space is so underrated and undervalued these days. Because even if you produce technology, no one really wants to pay for it, right? I mean, at least that's my statement. The client says, it's not my cup of tea. Well, I mean, I want to pay the CPM for the buying unit and that's it, But then again, the CPM on the buying unit side of things is always negotiated down because there are so many sellers, and the client obviously has more or less a buyer's market from time to time and really tries to make a use of it. So that eventually leads to a market where it's very difficult to bring out new innovation, because innovation, obviously, I think we can agree on that, has to be paid for in the first place. And if no one really wants to pay, because it's always connected to basically invoicing of actual media, that's a huge problem, isn't it?
It is.
I think so. I think since like for a couple of years, and we have seen that especially in Cannes, being in Cannes, once in a year, you have seen the AdTech market going totally crazy. I'd say between 2012 and 2016, maybe there was the peak somewhere where everybody wanted to build platforms and sell it to big media owners. That was really a little bit nasty, so to say. And that was that one period of time where AdTech solutions actually got overrated, at least from a financial and from a capital point of view. So they worked out rather well. On the other side of things, we were very early on missing innovation, true innovation. So of course there has been developments in the market that kept AdTech as a business and as companies very, very busy, like GDPR. Now we have transparency consent frameworks being in the release. So there has always been topics around that kept AdTech companies very, very busy for their development, and that was of course slowing down pure and real innovation, but just solving issues that were inherent, but not actually adding value into any offering. So that was certainly an issue, and you had to invest into all these solutions without being really rewarded for it, because it was just a requirement where people would say, okay, you have to. If I want to do programmatic advertising, I need to meet the specifications of the market, so you need to provide it. So basically, it got the shares, or let's say the money you got for licensing your ad technology was going less and less, but you had to invest even more into actually fulfilling the something that was considered commodity. So, and there was really, for many smaller and independent, especially for the indies, was just not the power to go for real innovation. But then lately, all the big ones that we have been seeing being very, very successful in globalization and also in selling the companies and exiting, those one either went IPO, and those are the ones like the Trade Desk, for instance, as a good example, has been constantly investing a lot into innovation. And you see innovation there. While others, first of all, have been selling to big media owners, like companies like Comcast, or here near there where I was working for SmartCap, we sold to RTL.
Right, yeah.
And then you are busy for 2 years with other stuff, right? With being integrated, and actually usually with providing a walled garden to the media owners. That's usually the mission that you get then. And that's also far off from the pure innovation that AdTech has once promised.
I think
that's difficult.
The question is, why is that so? So when you come back to the entrance question, just for a short glimpse, so nobody wants to pay for AdTech, right? So publishers first paid for it because there was just one ad server. So the publishers actually paid for it, that's fine. Then demand side added ad servers, and then there was targeting technology, verification technology, viewability, all that stuff. So that was all added into it. Still, the advertiser learned that he has a media CPM to pay, and not necessarily, if it doesn't want to be in-house technology, not for tech. So actually this industry here, the digital industry, when we try to convince and steal budgets over the 17, 20 years, and steal budgets away from other media channels, we actually forgave that, right? We didn't charge them for that. We didn't tell them, listen guys, if you want to make digital, you need tools, and this is a technology. Because we didn't want to. We want to steal money. We want to make it easy for them. So the result of that was that that the complicated ecosystem of digital was actually something kind of a black box for advertisers. So there was no money from that side in them. So, but the other participants in the market who made the money, let's say agencies and publishers in the broader sense, so it means also sales houses and all that stuff, they made the money, but they of course were then trying to get their margin high, and also they looked a lot on tech costs then. First of all, there was increasing CPMs on ad serving, but then more and more, nobody wanted to pay for it anymore. So actually the result was that ad technology companies tried to build their own ecosystem. And then they came up with a standalone business that was for them to create. So create value for themselves instead of just enabling other supply chain holders or whatever with value and enrich their business system and get paid a fair and decent price. No, now they needed to create value for their own companies. And the result then after a while was actually exactly that what Kai just explained. AdTech companies creating for their own value, being innovative for their own business purposes, not so much for the business purposes of the ecosystem, which in the end again said nobody wanted to pay for it. So the capital market had to pay for it, right? So then AdTech companies were either wanted to have a huge exit or went IPO so that they get the money from it that nobody else wants to bring to the table. And this is nobody's real fault. It's just very interesting to look at it from a historic view, how that actually escalated. And this is where we are now today. The smaller ones need to fight the fights to still have their being, their reason to be in the supply chain. And everybody is asking them to find solutions for stuff that they bring. So a supply side, a sales house wants to have these and these things, but also a working, for example, content management platform. So a publisher don't really want to do it by himself. It should be the SSP's job, whatever. So this is where it's going to get complicated.
Yeah, no, it's perfect. You're absolutely right. I mean, perfect, I not mean the situation, but the transition you just gave me. Because that basically leads us to another question that we talked about earlier, when we basically, discussed a little back and forth, chatted on the industry, which is, yeah, of course, the state of programmatic. Some say it's problematic, others, obviously say it's programmatic, and clearly alongside with that, supply path or demand path optimization, right? Because what you just described is you have this heated ecosystem that was somehow created only for the sake of its own. It seems like, at least from time to time, this Lumascapes where like no one really understands anymore, shit, I mean, I see this 100 different, vendors and SSPs and DSPs, DMPs, these days is also CMPs, and no one really understands, okay, like who belongs to whom and why should I actually work with those guys? And then you get those, Google take their share or, different vendors take their share out of the advertising dollar type of discussion. And you actually see that from $1 being spent in the end, the publisher, gets like 10% or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And then of course, everyone asks for supply path optimization, maybe demand path optimization, and you begin to feel that, especially the programmatic space is rather a problematic space. So what's your guys' take on that? I mean, clearly you are experts in either field, so and maybe you have some experiences to share.
Yeah, once we answer that, we also have a question from an attendee, so feel free to go ahead and answer, and then we take the questions.
Okay, so yes, programmatic, problematic. It is weird still for us. Yeah? So last year in Cannes. I was environment like here on the deck of a boat, and I met someone I didn't meet for, I don't know, a couple of years. So it was a nice guy. So I started chatting and say, okay, so where did you end up? Where are you working? And he explained me he's working in this and this company. Can't remember the name actually. We are doing this and this and this. It was about verification, viewability in app, blah, 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 blah. I actually didn't understand a word. The only thing that I asked myself is, why? So why? So I understand his offering. I didn't understand the reason. I didn't understand the value. I didn't understand shit. I just said,
Cool.
sounds, cheers.
All
man.
buzzwords in.
All buzzwords in, check it, and cheers. Let's have a drink, because I actually don't know why someone should do that. Yeah, and so it was another example of this, well, I do it for my own sake, yeah, stuff like this. But he wasn't that kind of person, you know. He really believed that what his company is doing or was doing brings value to the ecosystem. And I had to question this, not only because I didn't understand it fully, because the parts that I understood were actually just really, really, really useless. And this is AdTech, you know. So many people from back then, they ended up doing stuff where I have no clue for what this is worth, right? And they still, of course, they try to sell their products, and sometimes actually successful.
Yeah, I mean, it's very fragmented, the whole market. So basically the initial promise was that programmatic, so you have one central open RTB protocol, everybody's following the same standard, and you know, in the beginning, the basic functions, they are totally normalized and standardized, which was the promise to ease operations and to make the whole thing more efficient. Plus, getting a lot of benefits of real-time decisioning. And then usually the expectation was for the people like me who started very early building programmatic platforms, that on top of that, then you would build, you know, business intelligence, you would work on your algorithmic solutions in order to have the better machine, basically the machine learning processes and the better decisioning, but not really investing like 90% of your time into troubleshooting. So, and that's what we are left with still. It's like in the operations for programmatic deals, even if it's direct deals, where you really say, I'm only doing the same stuff as I've been doing for 20 years. Well, in my case, almost 20 years. I'm negotiating something. I want to run a campaign, and I have two parties, one on the demand and one on the supply side, and they really have bespoke a deal. Everything is set, and then still you can get it run. And then you are left with troubleshooting, and that's mainly because although the core is standardized, all these platforms have tried to generate kind of, some were even, I would call it artificial, key features and benefits and solutions. And these don't harmonize. They are not harmonized, right? So if you look at Google, for instance, all the verification, within built verification tools they have been offering early on, they work totally different than the ones we know from third parties that are integrated with other platforms. So you don't find the same standards for the same kind of feature set anymore. If you look at different platforms, everything is different actually, but not on the surface. It appears all the same, but it's not. So under the hood, it's totally different, and that's why you are always troubleshooting, and that's really not so nice, right? I mean, we were all hoping that programmatic would bring efficiency, and then now we're all fighting for getting simple stuff to work. So that's a little bothering, of course.
But very well answered, Kai. And you brought out the right points. We're talking about efficiency. We're talking about giants like Google who have their own way of doing things. And the question that comes from the audience is very much related to that. So our audience wants to get your opinion on the topic. That do you think that apart from the fact that no one's willing to pay for good ad tech, Google, Facebook, etc., because of the seemingly endless financial resources that they have, they're kind of hindering innovation somewhere in the industry?
Absolutely. I'd say yes, yes, and yes, and yes. Not really they're not sabotaging. Well, not obviously sabotaging anything. And also it's one thing is they're driving consolidation in the market. And consolidation is something that's not happening for free will, right? And if you look at the consolidations that we have been seeing around, even let's say on the very grand stage, like if you look at Yahoo, AOL building, you know, Oath for a while, which just has been around for 1 year, where big companies tried to put 4 platforms together. That's where you really see that platforms are not alike, because it didn't work. And I haven't seen really companies really merging 2 platforms for real. Anyway, all this comes from outside pressure that is of course coming from the giants like Google. But even beyond that, driving, you know, having the ability to offer features that do answer the current challenges in the market. For instance, for supply path optimization, really providing features there all in one solution, and being on the supply and demand side at the same time. And therefore building a universe that's having more or less its own language, and becoming, and that's what we really see with Google technology, becoming more, or let's say less and less compatible with like independent ad technology in practice. I'm not saying like there's no API anymore, that doesn't work. It's not like the deep technical theory stuff. In theory, it works. In practice, it doesn't anymore.
Yeah,
and it's making the players, the market guys, so much harder to work across different sets of technical infrastructure. And that's why I say, yeah, this is keeping you so busy with adopting and applying with those giant platforms. So, and you cannot invest that time and that resource into true innovation. So therefore I'd say, yeah, clear yes.
Yeah, I say yes. Also, you see it in a day-to-day life when you're doing AdTech. You see it every day, actually, that something really don't work with Facebook or with Google. And it's not that the technology is not there. Officially, it's all there. It's all open, but in fact, it's not. And this hinders, of course, innovation, because, and this is the reason why it's there, right? So there are fields that are new, where it takes a long time to get the giants to process it, and then to kind of get into a way that you can actually operate tech with tech. And that's, of course, not coincidentally, because they want to look at it, at this innovation, understand it, and then if it's really good, do it by themselves. You would do the same, okay? The problem with that is that it really hinders innovation, and it hinders diversity, and sometimes it really dries up complete parts of new business, where innovations start and then there's no cash flow, and then it dies until Google thinks, oh, now it's time that we do it. And this is in all industries where you have a duopoly or a monopoly. That is the game, right? And when you hear the official statements of the giants, it's always like, no, we are feeding the environment here, our industry environment, and we are also protecting it from fraud, from bad ads and stuff like this. Yeah, partly in their own interest, of course. But one example is the Coalition for Better Ads. Yeah. Nobody needed that. Nobody needed that. The ecosystem is controlling itself. If a platform is running bad ads, something that's bad for the user experience, users don't show up again. And then the publisher says, okay, I'll take this ad down because I'm losing users. That ran 20 years and was really fine. It's the same in magazines and on TV. If you run bullshit, your users running away. So who needs Coalition for Better Ads? So my company is, of course, member of the Coalition for Better Ads because we do rich media, so big things. So of course we are working with them and be aligned with that stuff, because we also want to know what's going on in the industry. But do we need it? No, we don't. Yeah, we don't need someone telling us what is good advertising. Definitely not.
No, that's a good point. I mean, clearly that's our experience as well, working on the publisher side. If the users don't like it, publishers won't do it, at least not twice, right? So, but then there's Google and the coalition to tell us what to do. But things that we see is working well, they put now on jeopardy because the coalition says that's maybe not a good thing. However, my users are telling me what's good. But on the other side, it's the same on the demand side. They say, okay, how about, I mean, we are always talking about supply path optimization on many, many aspects. we are almost never talking about demand path optimization. For us on the supply side, it's also important to really know what's going on upstream. It's not only your supply chain, which is in any industry is like a day-to-day duty that you have having to administrate a business. However, looking at the upsell, looking where your money's coming from and who is grabbing some stuff before you can get hands on, that's the same thing. And the supply path optimization starts nowadays, when we talk about programmatic, it starts from the DSP. DSPs are providing features for supply path optimization. So the buyer
DSP downstream, right?
It's downstream, so that the buyer gets more transparency on what's going on until you finally get your media for your budget. But I would really always argue, I mean, is this really the whole supply chain? And looking up to my demand chain, I see that's not the stop, because the buyer on a DSP can be almost anybody, right? It doesn't have to be an advertiser. It's usually an agency, or it's a trading desk, or it's an indie, or it's somebody who does arbitrage. But that's the same also for who determines what's good advertising, right? Sometimes it's Google. If they do it for their own universe and for exchange, and they build specifications, and Facebook does it for them, that's fine. But of course, it's not enough to them to be the dominators in the market because of their sheer reach and market reach, but also even on top of that, through the coalition that they heavily drive, they do even more than that. They just don't leave the market as it is, or figured out by themselves, and that's bringing all the other intermediates in a very weak spot. And that's also true for agencies. If you look at the demand side, it's like agencies are the operators. Many agencies have to fight for the mandate to really be in the strategic lead. They are fighting against the Accentures of these worlds that are coming into the space as well. So actually, the question really is, okay, who knows the shit right now? Who really is somebody who is able to really consult me on the tech side, but also on the strategic side? And this goes along, right? I need to find the right tech stack that is enabling me not only just to do my day-to-day work, but actually to build my strategic roadmap for my company. And that's a huge gap in the market on both sides, actually, demand and supply. And that's actually, I think that's intended. That's intended by companies like Google, because they can then even keep growing their market share and pushing the others away. But that's not their fault. It's more our weakness for the rest of the market.
There's a vicious circle, right? So
yeah.
They make us weak.
Kind of.
We are weak.
True.
It's a little bit tough. So what we tried to explain a little bit earlier is that ad technology actually then had to create its own value and its own value system. Well, Google has done that better than anybody else, right? So in the end, they used to be one of us, and now it's always we and them. Which is also not really true, because the world isn't black and white. Actually, if we think a little bit differently, we should also be happy that it's not an agency that took over the world, or it's not a power publisher, media house, whatever. It's actually an ad tech company. And Facebook is the same, right? Facebook didn't create content by itself. It was a technology platform, and it created it from the beginning in the combination with ads. So it's also a pure ad tech player, actually, a social media. That word didn't really exist back then. So also someone who came up from us, right? So from this environment. And maybe it's our fault that not again someone came up, or someone who makes that a little bit more balanced, the power. Maybe that's our weakness. Maybe it's their overpowering strength. Or in here, this is also a bit fun to see, is the media houses that are coming now with acquisitions into our field and feeding our field again.
Right. No, absolutely. And just stemming off from that point, we all know that obviously there are certain giants that dominate the space with whatever the hell they want to do, thus crushing the relatively smaller partners that might have a better product, might have a better offering, and just not able to showcase that or use that. So just stemming off from that, of course, it's an ongoing topic and nobody really knows the final answer, but what do you think can be done to prevent the market, you know, from being eaten up by these tech giants, and you know, develop more in the favor of these smaller companies, or like companies that innovate, or companies that are interesting to work with?
I would say there's only one way to do that, and that's education. So whenever we see, you know, common practice from tech giants killing individual or customized better solutions, that's usually because the respective prospect, be it a publisher or an agency or an advertiser even, is just not able to really either understand the true value of having an independent being the AdTech provider or a service provider. That's one thing, so that they are unable to qualify that, or that they do qualify, so they know that this is something great that they are having in front of them, but they don't feel they can maintain it, so they can service themselves. So that's why you are forced more or less, with your having, you know, scarce human resources that actually also bringing expertise into the execution of your technology, forces you to go for standardized solutions, because then you can find talent out there. Then you can hire a senior from somebody who helps you building up your organization. And we have seen many attempts actually on both sides, supply and demand, to go for something that is more local, if that is a benefit, or is more custom or more tailored, so to say.
Right.
We have seen those attempts, but we have seen many of them failing. And that's basically because it's hard to build up your teams, the knowledge and the expertise. So I'd say, as providers of different solutions, we have to invest, and yes, we have to invest, but a lot in educating the market and building this resource that will actually appreciate, you know, our more tailored and specified solutions.
Right. And since you're talking from a perspective of a provider who obviously has spoken to publishers in your respective countries, your respective fields. So one of the questions that comes in from the audience is that, talking about publishers, only publishers, that can't afford all this tech stack on their own because they are bootstrapped or whatever, what can be their solution to participate on the media budgets? Like, what would you recommend from your experience?
So actually, the answer is almost the same that Kai gave. It's education. So first of all, those publishers need to educate themselves. And you will find guys like Kai and me somewhere at events, and like Ilian standing there with a beer in the hand and willing to talk whatever. And as you have, all of you just noticed, we like to talk, right? So yes, you can educate yourself. And then you might find better ways, actually, without spending shit ton of money, to find technical solutions for yourself, to be in control of your participation and the market. And this is, from my perspective, from our perspective, also just Premium's perspective, but Show is the same. It is, you need to actually tailor what's there to your own needs, which is doable by being brave. Educate yourself, and then talk to the specialists in the market for video, for search, for whatever it is, for in-page, for outstream, for rich media, for display standard, all that stuff. So don't go for the on the first look easy solution, because then you're losing control. Then you can't actually manage your own inventory. You can't yield your inventory, and you don't have prices in your hand. So you need to learn that stuff, and it's not that complicated. I mean, hey, look at us. We are not the smartest people on the well, maybe on this boat, but not on the planet. And still, we came a long way. So it is doable. But embrace what's there and show up. So there's something, DMX.co, OMR, Cannes, wherever. More and more advertisers are actually coming, right? So there are more and more advertisers, brands, direct advertisers, smaller advertisers, e-commerce, more and more year after year. But to be honest, I don't see many publishers. And that's a problem. The publishers need also to come. And I know sometimes it's expensive, but it's not expensive to drive to Cologne. It's not expensive if you're living in France, drive to the Côte d'Azur for a day. It's not expensive to go to AdTech in London if you're in the Great Britain. So there is stuff around, and you need to educate yourself.
Also, yeah, it's true. Publishers have been very much disconnected to the market for way too long time. Another hint is there's many vendors that also offer a very sophisticated path, you know, from managed service to self-service, right? So this is also something you can watch out for. Say, okay, you are basically providing a technical solutions, and there is no scalable business model that includes managed service in the long run. But there's plenty of vendors that have invested in a certain stack of human resource that can really train you on the job. And then you fade it out, the managed service, and go over to self-service. That's a perfect way, you know, to educate young talent on the job. Right. So you get your return on investment right from the start, and then you're really building out your independence. That's also something I would really suggest or advise, always watch out for.
Yeah, absolutely. Combining research with, if you have the means and the time and the availability to actually drive down to these places, would of course work out best. But yeah, of course, as we all know, there's plenty of information available on the internet already. There are seminars like these. There are a bunch of other content that's available for partners. So yeah, for sure, that's a great idea.
Do we have any other questions from the audience, Tanya?
Actually, no. And we are also just like close to finish. We have around 10 minutes left. So if the audience has any more questions, feel free to post it now.
As always, audience, go ahead and shoot. Until then, of course, there's a lot of other stuff to talk about. And I think one very interesting topic also popped up. I mean, automatically somehow you always end up, you know, talking about the giants, you know, like you start with AdTech and, you know, who's willing to pay for it. And in the end, it's always about Google and Facebook. And of course, there's a reason for that. I mean, basically on every panel, every industry meeting, every dinner you have with folks from the industry, you end up talking about Google and Facebook. And also, as Jörg said, it's not always black and white. I mean, and I think you brought a very interesting point, Jörg, which is, I mean, Google and Facebook used to be one of us, right? That's very interesting. And I think you barely hear that often enough, I should say. I mean, it's always, everyone is pretending as those guys would have always been there right on top. But I think to the contrary.
It's like alien invasion, yeah, and that's just not true. Yeah.
That's not true. And I mean, to think about it, it's very interesting that even your mother and my grandmother, they know, maybe not my grandmother, let's stick to the mothers, you know, like even our mothers or fathers, they know about AdTech companies, which is Google and Facebook at the end of the day, right? So those companies became so fucking popular, like globally, because they were good at selling ads at the end of the day. This is how they made money. And I think it's very, very interesting. And it also shows us that they do a lot of things right. And it also, now getting back to ad technology, shows us that they, especially talking about Google here, they're very good at ad technology, right? I mean, the Google tech stack is a very good tech stack. Why? Because Google invested a lot of the money they made along all those years into their technology. Are they now starting to basically cut others out of the equation by, you know, introducing the Coalition for Better Ads to the market or killing the third-party cookie on Chrome? You know, yeah, of course they do. Obviously,
it's control, right? So,
yeah, but we would all do the same fucking thing if we could. That's
the funny thing on panels, right? So everybody is, if it's not from Google or from Facebook, is really shouting against the walled gardens, right? So they create their walled garden, they don't let us in, they don't let us play. It's a big four. They are so mean, they don't want to let us play with them. But in the end, the bigger ones, so those people who can afford it, they actually all try to create their own walled garden. Yeah. So and they're using AdTech for it because hey, that's how it's done, right? So you can buy a piece of land, but you need someone actually to make a loan and then a fence. And this is tech, right? Creating a nice high fence with electricity in it at best. So you need someone to do that, and that's ad technology. And this is actually not what was the initial thought of ad technology. Ad technology is technology that connects, right? Which enables to do whatever you want to do. Yeah? So programmatic as a general was actually a solution for someone sitting in New York wanting to buy in South Africa a piece for putting advertising on it, right? And that wasn't possible beforehand, and it should be possible through programmatic. That was actually the cause. And on the other hand, for someone sitting in Botswana, that should have been the solution to offer their website for someone in wherever, Peru, to put an ad on it. So it's actually always was about connecting and enabling.
It was about transparency, right?
And it was about transparency, exactly.
Which is like even more ironic considering how intransparent the space basically became.
Exactly, it's really ironic.
Right? So it's even more ironic, but this is exactly what it is. In the beginning, programmatic was about full as a model, full market transparency, and it ended up being the opposite somehow.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was just too, of course, the tech itself wasn't perfect, right? So open exchanges, of course, they had their backdoors, and you then all of a sudden, of course, you have seen like shady business models, offering inventories that never existed and stuff. And there was, of course, abuse. There was abuse, and that's typically human, because everybody wants to grow fast. Everybody wants to, to get rich. And that was really, that's really the let's say the dark side of our industry, as in any industry, I guess. But yeah, I mean, actually, I personally, I even dare to speak it out. I prefer not to work with Google. I prefer to work with indies, right? However, I only came into programmatic advertising and that technology because I cooperated with Google. I resold, back then, I resold ad serving solutions from Google for a Dutch company back then. And I sat around with the product managers of Google, and I was just amazed how great this is, and how clever and intelligent, and how far off from the rest, right? So high above standard, and current knowledge in the market. So I mean, at the end, I don't know if anybody would act like the big ones do, right? I don't know. I think most people would, and most people only, as Jörg said, they're just screaming because in reality they just want to be Google. Everybody wants to be Google. I'm not really seeing it like this, not anymore. I think 10 years ago I would have done the same. And it's, and we have to give it to them. It's based on pure awesomeness. This stuff just always worked. And yes, you have to give your kudos to that and respect it. Now, just still, it doesn't mean that you cannot at least look around and, check once in a while for other options.
Fair enough. Are you stepping on our toes already, Tanya, in terms of timing?
Yeah, we just have 4 minutes left, and we can take one last question, maybe for Jörg. So, Kai spoke about how awesome it is and everyone wants to be Google. Do you think, and it's a very unique question, do you think that the publication of artificial intelligence or machine learning because of companies like Google or Facebook may be outweighing the negative impact on the tech innovation side of things?
So first of all, I don't see that the innovations that these guys bring to market are as said, it's not black and white. They're not really negative. It always depends what you're doing out of it. But, and Kai is also right with the awesomeness of the technology that they bring to market. And AI and well, more machine learning, because AI won't be really part of what we are doing. Is this a game changer? I don't think so, because smarter algorithms and machines that are learning are still, and that's why it's not AI, still have to play by rules. And those rules will always be made by mankind and by companies and company interests. So I do believe that, in fact, at some point, machine learning will make Google even more efficient. And hopefully that this knowledge will be shared then with the rest of the tech world in some point and be interchangeable. Then everybody profits from it. If not, it won't change so much, but that Google gets better and better.
But in all fairness, they do that, right? They share a lot. They build a great knowledge base also, and not only with machine learning, they do with AI, probably not so much with real AI, probably not so much, but machine learning, this is, there's so much knowledge shared with the community. And that has been the same with RTB, by the way, as well. OpenRTB has been invented and created by numerous people. There's not one single person accrediting for it, but many of those people came from Google, and they never claimed for it, right? So it's well, I don't think it's outweighing it, because Google is taking control and keeping control on this market as long as it's the major cash cow for the organization. But then, of course, the scope of Google is so much bigger than just advertising, and we will yet have to see whether we all are more going to be beneficiaries of that, or if it's even by making them more powerful and how they are going to use this power. I think we have seen both a little bit from Google in the history.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think actually it's perfect timing for finishing as well, you know? I mean, we are just almost 1 minute is left, not even, I think. And if we wrap it up and if we summarize, I mean, thanks guys for the session. I think it was a good talk as always. Secondly, hopefully we see each other again next year in Cannes on a real boat and not in this virtual type of yacht thingy anymore. Firstly, actually, that was the first thing. Thanks to everyone for participating and asking all the questions. Thanks for the moderation, Tanya. Yeah, and lastly, I think we can say that even though you want to try about AdTech as an enabler and no one's willingness to pay for it, you end up talking about Google and Facebook at the end of the day, as always. So with that, let's call it a day. See you soon, next year at the latest. Hey, guys, and don't miss out on our next session. I think it's on Wednesday, right? Which is a panel coming up also on brand sustainability. Also part of the summer AdTech event. Show Heroes, tune in again. See you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.